Oh, it looks like we are live now. Hi, everyone. Welcome to Putting the A into STEAM at the Girls in STEAM event. My name is Tam, and I will be your host for today's panel. I just want to give everyone maybe like a moment to trickle in before I do any further introductions. Okay. Sounds good. All right then. Well, it's 6:01, so let's get started. If just like I mentioned earlier, my name is Tam, and I will be your host for today's panel, Putting the A into STEAM. I just want to begin by acknowledging that Science World is located on the traditional and unceded lands of the Musqueam, Squamish, and Tsleil-Waututh nations. We're just going to start today with a quick introduction from our amazing group of mentors. We have lovely mentors who are amazing, and then it'll be followed by a hosted discussion. If you have any questions for any of our mentors, you are always welcome to write it in the chat, and then I'll field it towards our mentors to answer. We also have our technician today. Our technician is Faith, so you won't be seeing Faith, but Faith will be monitoring the chat and working behind the scenes. So if you have any technical issues connecting to our panel today, Faith is happy to assist. We also ask that you please keep the comments in the chat section respectful and relevant to the topic, which is putting the artistic side, to STEAM. And all right, so now let's meet our mentors. Awesome, awesome. We have our mentors coming up on the screen. And so let's just go around by doing a brief introduction before we jump into the questions. I'd like, starting with Jenny, I would like our mentor to share their name, their role, and their favorite part about their role.
Hi, my name is Jenny. I am a photographer that specializes in remote places and wild species. I think my favorite part of my job is the adventure. I mean, being out in the field, there's nothing like it. And you get to meet all types of people, from engineers to scientists to, the keyboard warriors at home that are, spreading their awareness and doing all that outreach. So I loved STEAM. I think that the most valuable part about it is that it not only encourages people to pursue STEAM, but to see that the value in collaborating, I guess, amongst the different disciplines. So
Awesome. Thanks, Jenny. Thanks for that introduction. Sounds like a wonderful, lots of cool adventures. I'll be asking more questions about that after. Madeline, would you be able to share us your role and your favorite part about it?
Yeah, sure. My name is Madeline. I'm a senior marketing designer. So I'm a graphic designer basically who does more strategic designs. And I think my favorite part about my job is working with a lot of really cool creative people all the time. There's always something interesting to learn, something interesting to do, somewhere to go. Like always cool events, different design trends. Like it's always interesting and it's always a lot of fun.
Thanks, Madeline. I'll also be asking you some highlights maybe about your best designs that you'd like to share. And Mariama, would you be able to share with us your job title as well as your favorite part about your job?
Sure. Just a quick question. The way I'm looking at the screen right now, can everyone see me, or is the name covering my face?
Actually, yeah, the name is kind of covering your mouth. I can see
Is
like
it?
your nose and your eyes.
Okay.
Yeah, there we go.
Better?
Excellent.
Okay. So my name is Mariama, and I forget, Tam. You might have to reiterate the question again, since I
That's
was
okay.
having visual
um,
problems.
yeah, that's okay. Would you be able to share us your job title or your role, and your favorite part about your job?
Okay. So my current role, I have a background actually in science and art, and I'm a self-taught visual artist. So my current role is as a bio art technician at the university. And basically, my role is to make sure that the safety of the lab is in check and everything. And I also help with workshops and prepping that. And, other things that I work with a lot with students as well. And supervisors, and so it's really cool. The best part I like about being in that job position is that you work coincide with artists and scientists, and it's a great way to have that interdisciplinary um, interaction. So I really do like that, because I've never seen where you can combine arts and sciences together like that and build this community, which I always thought growing up, like, you were either in the sciences or you were in the arts. It was never, you were never, together in that sense. So yeah.
That's awesome. Yeah, really like that blend between the two, which is what this panel is going to be all about. So that's awesome. Thanks for sharing that. Are there any questions in the chat? Let me see. Looks like there are no questions in the chat right now, but we can move on to the discussion part, the Q&A. So I will probably start with a prompt for us, and any of you are always welcome to jump in and add to each other and even ask each other questions too, because it's also a lot of fun seeing all the mentors interacting and mentoring each other in a way. So yeah, I enjoyed hearing all of your backgrounds. So I just want to know a little bit more. Starting with Jenny. So you mentioned that you do a lot of photography, um, and you've gone on many adventures. Would you be able to share with us maybe your favorite place that you've been to, and like any highlights of, photos that you would like to highlight for us? Tell us about it. Oh, I think you're muted right now, Jenny. So sorry.
So my favorite, I specialize in polar regions pretty much. I think most of people know me for my photos of Antarctica, or more specifically, actually the Arctic. I spent a lot of time in the Arctic. This year alone, I'll be up there for well over a month camping on the sea ice. So that is probably like the game-changing adventure for me, where I thought I adventured, and no, I didn't. Not until that. Like, I was like, yeah, I'm tough. I've climbed mountains. I've done Kilimanjaro. And then I'm like, no, I haven't, camped on sea ice amongst polar bears and need 24-hour bear watch. And like, we traveled, I think, 400 kilometers the first time I did it, by a snowmobile from one hamlet to another. I had no idea what I was getting into. Like, we hit packed ice, you're jumping over cracks in the ocean, with your snowmobile. And I'm sitting in the back on like this box that's strung together by ropes. And so it's called a kamatik. Yeah, they're pulling me that over, like, they can jump up to 15 feet of open water in those. So I'm sitting in the back shooting from the back of this thing, jostling around. And then, I mean, it's cold. Yeah, it was just like a crazy, crazy adventure. And the scenery is like unbelievable. Animals are unbelievable. And you're alone. Like, there's no Wi-Fi at all. That's probably my most favorite place, our Canadian Arctic.
That is really, really cool. Thank you so much for sharing that. I can't say that I've ever been to the Arctic. So yeah, that's amazing. Oh, Madeline, did you have something to add? Yeah.
I was just curious, how long did it take you to go that far on a snowmobile in the Arctic? Like,
So it really depends on the sea ice condition. So if the sea ice is really good, you can get from, like, Inuit can get from A to Z like super fast. when the sea ice isn't good, it could double your time. For the 400 kilometers, we made it just on time, what we wanted, like the optimal time of 2.5 days to do 400 kilometers. But we did hit one stretch where we were trying to climb on top of like pack ice to get a higher. I even sent the drone up to see if there was a way to get through this pack ice, because we have 2 snowmobiles and that's it. It's not like you have a car or a tow or a helicopter. You're out there on your own. We bring tools to fix the snowmobiles and everything. So going through that rough terrain, anything can happen to your machine. You really have to, keep that in mind. So I popped up the drone to see if there was a way out, and it was just like, yeah, there's no way out. We're just gonna have to hope. And we made 400 kilometers. Literally, one snowmobile was like on its last legs and made it. Yeah, made camp. Had one snowmobile left to finish the mission, so it was good.
Wow, that is awesome. Thanks for sharing that. Madeline, similarly, I'd like to hear a little bit more detail about maybe your role, like if you'd like to highlight any projects, designs that you'd like to share.
Yeah, sure. So in my role, I'm basically creating all sorts of visual assets like websites or posters, making so I get data from different parts of my team, or we have different business objectives, and I basically make those things look pretty in different ways, right? So some interesting projects I've worked on. So I used to work at a television station, Knowledge Network, and last year they had a documentary television series come out, and it was a historical series on untold stories of British Columbia. And but there's just so much information, uh, and so many interesting unheard stories from indigenous people and like all sorts of different communities that don't really get told in textbooks. So my project was to create a learning resource, like an online timeline that kind of organized all those other cool stories that they couldn't fit into a television series. um, so that was a really fun project, and um, I don't think I shared the link with you guys ahead of time, but I'd be happy to give you guys that URL if you wanted to share it. Um, it was just it's really fun to be able to create something that looks really nice and is easy to use, but you also get to learn about all sorts of different things all the time, right? And I'm a really curious person, so it's always a lot of fun. Here, I'll send it in the chat right now. So that was like one of the last larger projects I did that was like really fun and interesting. Okay.
That's really cool. I'll definitely take a look at that link. Thanks so much for sharing that, Madeline. How about you, Mariama? Would you like to share more details about your role, kind of like any highlights? Um, yeah, any interesting stories or interesting projects you've worked on with people, both scientists and artists?
I'd first like to say that's a very cute dog, Madeline. Very, very cute dog. It's probably tired. So, any interesting, let's see here. Well, I just finished, I think, well, I think, but we, for Black History Month, this month here, so we just completed I just did an editorial piece for the place where I work at right now, and I'm pretty stoked about it. So it's supposed to be launching tomorrow. So yeah, I'm excited about that. So I think that's probably one of the I guess one of those moments where you're just kind of like, yeah, I feel good about that. So that's one project I can say I've kind of completed for that. And in terms of science, there's always something going on, project wise. So new journeys, I guess, for me in terms of where I want to pursue my research. So it's kind of being paved the way as, I wouldn't say as we speak, but it's a journey, a long awaited journey. So I'm looking forward to it. But my interests are in genetics and genomics. So I do like, learning more about that and seeing where it takes us in terms of this, I guess the journey we call life. I guess I would put it like that. So that's what I could say really about both right now. That's current, and I still do some artwork when I can, when I have the time to do it. So some of my artwork and some other artists in the newsletter are being featured as well. So yeah, so I'm pretty happy about that, and I'm happy to hear everyone else's journeys too. So
Can I ask a question?
sure.
Mariam, what was your editorial about? Like, you said it's about Black History Month. Like, is it
Mhm.
like a magazine feature, or is it like
It's a newsletter for Incubator Art Lab. That's the lab I work for, the BioArt in Windsor here. So it is an editorial piece about, I'm trying to put it in the most diplomatic and nice way of putting it, just the silence of when you see something and you don't say anything about it, in terms of you know, the ethnic and visible minorities that do art, but they're underrepresented and they don't have that voice sometimes. They do have a voice, but there's other people who could, stand up for these injustices and speak up for them. And the whole, I guess I would say theme, is silence, in terms of people not speaking up when there is a time to speak up, and there is a, time for everything. And when something isn't right, you should speak up about it. Thanks for asking, Madeline.
Yeah, thanks for asking, Madeline, and thanks for sharing that. Yeah, that's amazing that you're, working on these awesome projects. Let's move on to the next question then. Speaking of your roles and your favorite part of your role, as well as your highlights that you've mentioned, I'm curious to know how everyone kind of like, what was your pathway getting to where you are now? Would you like to share? We'll go around and share, I guess, how you got to where you are now. Let's start backwards. Mariama, would you like to share? I know you just spoke, but I feel bad picking on
Yes,
Jenny
I hope she
first.
asked me this one first. So I
Yay!
don't have a long-winded answer, but I would just say where I ended up now versus where I thought I would be when I was a child, they're completely different paths. I always grew up with some form of arts in terms of, being surrounded or participating in arts, if it's visual, performing arts, or literary arts. So I had a little flashback, and I was thinking all these things you forget when you grew up as a child, and you're like, yeah, I really did all these things. If I went to plays, or if I went to, say, the Kennedy Space Center, I'm also into space. So I remember going there as a child, and, Cirque du Soleil, or all these other, theatrical events that you go to, or Porgy and Bess, one of, probably very good opera. And who can forget the Lion King, right? So all these things, Akuna Matata. But in terms of, when you look back, you forget sometimes when you do all these work stuff, and you forget, that you did these stuff as a child, and you realize how much you liked it, which you kind of forgot because you had other, more priority things in life, right? In terms of, paying bills and all the other stuff. But so I would just say, you know, I guess you never forget as a child, but you remember, you have those fond memories. And I think that stuck with me, even though I forgot at some point, but I still remembered. And so it helped me to reimagine, or to, find out what my real passion is. And I realized I can't really live without both science and arts. It's always been there, but the arts has kind of been dormant. And then it's been reawakened, I guess you would call it. So I think, does that answer the question? I think it does. So I think it's just, you as a person, when you're going through the motions of life, you step back and you have to just kind of look back and say, is this really like what I really want? And I think the biggest thing is to have people around you that support your dreams and your passions, and push you in the direction, and always believe in yourself, even if there's someone who doesn't believe. Or I always, say that if the naysayers are naysaying, just keep doing what you're doing, for yourself.
Thank you. That is really great advice that I will also try to live by. And yeah, I thank you for sharing, your childhood and kind of how art was always part of your life as well as science. So thank you for sharing that. Madeline, would you like to share kind of your pathway of how you ended up in your role now?
Yeah, totally. So my path is pretty windy, but like as a child, I always loved art. Like I always thought I'd grow up and be an artist. All throughout high school, I loved art courses, but I lived in like a smaller city and went to a small high school, so we didn't have a million electives. But I did art throughout all high school, and when I first went to university, I did fine arts. But I really didn't really know what the options were out there. And like when I was going to university for fine arts, I was like, technically I love this, but I was looking for something that had more like purpose or like something. Like I didn't want to just paint a beautiful painting. I wanted something that felt more practical or purposeful. So I found out about graphic design, and that really scratched that itch for me where I could be creative and use all those wonderful technical skills. Like I have a background in photography and magazines and all those fun creative outlets that I love, but I can apply those with data and technical skills like coding, um, and that felt a lot more purposeful to me. And it's something I think that really blended those two worlds. And after I kind of discovered graphic design, I switched my university schooling and kind of went off from there and tried a few different types of design and like marketing and magazine publishing and things like that. And now with my current position, I kind of use a little bit of all of those experiences. So, oh,
Sorry, I forgot to unmute myself. That's really cool. Thank you. And also, I love our guest star there. Your dog is
yeah,
very cute.
her name's Daisy. Sorry, she was hopping up on my chair.
Oh, we got Daisy too joining us for Girls in STEAM. Thank you, Madeline and Daisy. How about you, Jenny? What was your pathway in getting into photography?
Um, so I went to school for chemistry, a chemistry degree. Um, I worked in chemistry, but I think when I was in school, when you go to those things and they're like, who wants to be a scientist in the research lab and who wants to work in, I don't know, like in a lab, more labs, PhD perhaps, who wants to be working in sales even. And for me, I just had no idea. I knew I didn't necessarily want to be in a lab. Um, but I think the most important thing was keeping my options open and my mind open. Like I didn't have to be in sales selling chemicals. I didn't have to be in just environmental, which is what I do, is environmental monitoring as well. I didn't have to just be that. I'm not defined by a career path really. Like I make it what I want to make it. So I traveled a lot and always had a camera with me like most travelers, and it just kind of became a thing. I think 4 years ago, my social media picked up, and I've always been, I think because of that sciencey curiosity part of me, you don't just travel and then say goodbye. You're interested in, the rocks and the animals and the culture. And there's a natural curiosity about everything. So with that, you want to tell stories, and I don't know, it just kind of blossomed. I think my advice is that on all the projects that I've ever worked on, I have never seen like I think when I was younger, I did see this aspect of like black and white, like you have to choose art. Definitely, I agree that it's like you have to choose art or you have to choose science. But in all the projects I've ever worked on, regardless of it be an environmental thing, a conservation thing, even if I imagine like designing a chair or designing furniture or a building, there the the masterpiece of it is because you have collaborated. Absolutely, science, art, like even in conservation you need like communication, and that's art. So I don't know, I think my career path is still winding. Like I don't think it's definitive that I'm going to be a photographer forever, right? I think that's what's fun about it. So I'm kind of all over the place.
Oh, that's awesome. Thank you for sharing that. And yeah, you're right. Like no pathway is ever, linear. So it's really nice to hear everyone's journey and your current roles and all of your highlights. I'm just gonna check again if there's any questions in the chat. It looks like there's none, but that's okay. Um, hmm. Speaking of advice, actually, Jenny mentioned some advice. What advice would you give a 14-year-old who is interested in your line of work? Since our attendees here are usually around ages 10 to 16-ish. So yeah, what kind of advice would you give them?
Be curious and be hungry. I think the more you know and the more education and that could take many forms. Formal education will get you, the resume, but there's a lot of street credit in what we do. So like things like when I say, I snowmobiled across sea ice, camped there for 2 weeks, it says something about my character. So you have to put yourself out there. You have to take challenges, even if you don't know if you can. And yeah, like learn everything. Like if you have the chance, don't say that you don't like it until you give it a chance. Like pick up that book and read about genetics, pick up that book and read about like for what I photograph, the better I know my subject, my place, my location, like Google Earth, everything, the better I'm at capturing it, at telling the story, right? And especially when you have a client, like it could be cultural aspects, like Indigenous, Black History Month. You need to know you're not there just to capture an image, right? You need to communicate what they need, your client needs. So you most definitely have to be well read, like very, very well read in terms of be it science, culture, whatever it is. So stay curious and always continue to learn.
Thanks for that advice, Jenny. Does anyone, do either of you, Madeline or Mariama, want to share any advice you'd like to give to a 14-year-old who's interested in your career? Yeah, Madeline.
Okay. So I was thinking about this question, and I think a couple pieces of advice that, like, when I was a lot younger, a lot of people kind of poo-pooed arts, like, oh, yeah, like you'll be poor or like whatever. But and I just didn't know how many possibilities are out there for creative people. Like you can do something like Jenny and Mariama did, where you're like blending the two worlds, or you can do design, marketing, or artist. Like whether you just personally feel fulfilled creatively or you want to make a career out of it, like there's just so many options and opportunities out there. So if that's something you like really love and you're passionate about, don't be afraid to pursue and learn more about it. Um, I think that was just a piece of advice I wish I kind of heard when I was younger, because I just didn't. There's just so many options out there you don't even know exist until you start exploring, right? And then that, kind of similar to what Jenny was saying, was that like your career will probably change throughout your life. Like no one really goes to school, gets a job, and does that exact same job for the rest of their lives. Your career will ebb and flow, change. Like your interests will change. So don't be afraid to like start somewhere and change your mind later.
Thanks, Madeline. Yeah, you're absolutely right. How about you, Mariama? Do you have some advice you'd like to give to a 14-year-old?
Just thinking about when I was 14. But Jenny and Madeline gave excellent advice. I can echo that. But I guess to add, and it sort of relates to what Madeline was saying, doing your own type of research. I think Jenny mentioned that too. Is just, I love to investigate. I've always been a curious person. And I think, when you hear what someone says to you and you take it as the, I guess standard or golden rule, and you don't do your own homework, you miss out on a lot of things that, possibly, because you listen to someone, not that you can't listen to someone and they give advice, but you can hear their advice, but you also have to have your own, gut feeling as to what you think is right for you rather than what someone else is telling you they think is right for you. And I think sometimes people fall into that, I guess, little rabbit hole where they don't go and investigate for themselves, and they realize that, oh, there were these opportunities and I just didn't realize it because there was just this one type of deer in the headlight type of thinking, and you didn't explore it for yourself. And I would say to my 14-year-old self, or any other 14-year-old at this point, reach out, network with people. If there's something you like or you're interested in, find your peoples, find the squad or the team, is out there that's doing the stuff that you like to do, and network with them. Join groups, or in terms of particular groups that interest you in terms of what your passion is, and it will open up a whole new world and a lot less, I wouldn't say heartache and pain, but a lot less a lot less trouble in terms of finding out later in life that there were all these things that you missed out on because you never went and asked or investigated for yourself. So I would say do your own homework and then do your investigation. Trust, it will help.
Awesome. Thank you so much for sharing that. You're absolutely right. Yeah, thank you all of you for sharing an advice to give to folks tuning in today. Um, I'm also curious to know, so we talked about highlights and, lots of great advice. What kind of challenges did you have along the way? Would anyone like to share maybe like um, a really big challenge that you had to overcome in your career? Uh, Jenny, yeah.
I think for what I do, outdoor space, science as well, I think in almost every industry, diversity is not a thing. So we can talk the color of your skin or the gender in general. My space is very, very white male dominated. So there is a stigma to, what that person that does what I do looks like. He's a white male that is tough, really tough, and, you really have to convince people like that you can do it. And that's not easy. So we have had many, like amongst all the girls, like we've had many conversations about how do you overcome this, and like even a camera, it's expensive. We do all have cell phone cameras, but like it's super discouraging for a 14-year-old to look at a camera, go to a camera shop, look at the professional cameras and be like, I'll never be able to afford to even pursue this. And so one of the things that a lot of females in my industry, a lot of minority groups, we're working on diversifying our space. So like making the outdoor space safe for women and minorities. And we've started kind of like a little camera thing where encouraging friends to donate their cameras. So we all have like these cameras that we don't use anymore. And hopefully we can find someone that like a youth that could use it and hopefully blossom from it. So
That's amazing, Jenny. Thank you for sharing that. Yeah. Um, how about Madeline? Would you like to share any challenges that you might have in your field, your career?
I think one of the biggest challenges I had early on was just breaking into the field. Like uh, I did lots of internships on top of school and like working full time while I was in college, and it was tough to find like uh, stable work at first. But looking back, that was also a really like fun time in my life. So I did lots of freelance work and contracts, and I got to try a lot of different things and meet a lot of people. So um, in that way, I was like networking and meeting people and trying new things and working in different industries. And but it was hard at the time and it was exhausting. But I look back and I realized it was also a lot of fun, and I have some really cool projects from that period of my life. And that experience also built up to where I was more qualified to like apply for cooler jobs at bigger companies. And all those experiences, like Jenny was saying, it can feel daunting looking at like someone who's like more established later in their life when you're 14 or 13. But all those little experiences that you do just add up, and it kind of creates a snowball effect for when you're later on in your career. So I don't know, I'm really trying to like live by the motto to like not rush to the finish line, but just kind of like enjoy the journey, because it really does sometimes work out really well for you, even if you don't see it right away.
It's a really nice motto to live by. Definitely, life is a journey. That's awesome. Thank you. And we have a couple minutes left. So, Mariama, would you also like to share any challenges that you might have in your career or your field before we wrap up?
I would say I don't really have much to add. I think Jenny and Madeline did a wonderful job. I would just say, the same thing, diversifying and, the barriers where you're probably one of two females in the field or that kind of a thing. But, I look at it and I say, okay, bring it on, bring the challenge on, and I won't say I'll show you, but I would say, it's always nice to silently prove um, someone wrong or groups of people who thought you never could. So silence, like I think, depending on how you take it, obviously silence is a word that is used for many different, associations in itself. But sometimes you don't have to really say anything. But when people start seeing you breaking those barriers, then for sure, and I think it's just being humble and being quiet about what you do, but silently people are watching all these great things happen for you, even though you're still falling and it's still a struggle behind the scenes, like everyone is doing. We are human, right? So there will be struggles, but it's worth it in the end, and I think Jenny and Madeline can agree with that.
For sure, yes. I can also agree to that. So thank you, all of you, so much for joining us today and being such amazing mentors and sharing wonderful advice and your background. I learned a lot, and I had a lot of fun. I hope everyone also had a lot of fun and learned a lot from each other. So thank you so much for joining us tonight. And just remember that we are having more sessions on Saturdays. So be sure to plan what sessions you want to attend. And I'll see you all next time, maybe on Saturday, if you're attending. Thank you, everyone, for your time. It was a pleasure.